Chapter 1. The Man in the Corner. I am 49 years old, and I live in a house that does not belong to me. The deed carries my wife's name. The car outside carries my wife's name. The investment accounts, the insurance policies, the retirement portfolio, all Marta's. I earn $1,300 a month working at a small downtown bookstore that smells permanently of dust and brewed coffee. My paycheck lands in the joint account she monitors, categorizes, and corrects. If I want to buy new shoes, I ask. If I want to replace my phone, I explain why. If I want to move money, I don't. This is not something that happened overnight. It happened the way water shapes stone, slowly, quietly, without resistance. Roberto. Her voice slices through the bedroom. I step into the walk-in closet, where Marta stands surrounded by pressed fabrics and color-coordinated heels. She's already dressed for the company party. Navy silk dress, sharp shoulders, minimal jewelry. Executive elegance. Senior leadership at Vanguard Consulting. Strategic advisor. Power wrapped in perfume. She turns toward me holding two suits on wooden hangers. Charcoal or dark blue? Whichever you think. I answer automatically. Her lips flatten slightly. Charcoal is safer. Blue reads provincial. Provincial. I nod. She lays the charcoal suit on the bed and gestures. Change. I obey. The fabric feels stiff against my skin. I used to own a leather jacket in college, worn at the elbows, soft as memory. I don't know what happened to it. Probably donated during one of Marta's seasonal purges. She steps closer as I button the shirt. Stand straight. I straighten. She adjusts my collar, fingers quick and precise. You slouch. It looks insecure. I'm not insecure, I say quietly. She pauses, meets my eyes in the mirror, then smiles faintly. Of course you are. That's fine. Just don't show it. She slides the tie around my neck and tightens it herself. You don't need to talk tonight, she continues. Actually, it's better if you don't. I wasn't planning to. Good. She smooths the lapels of my jacket. All executives are bringing their spouses. It's optics. You're there to complete the picture. The picture. Stay near the wall, she adds. Don't interrupt conversations. And don't approach me while I'm networking. I won't. And if someone speaks to you, I'll respond politely and briefly. Yes. She studies me, then steps back as if inspecting a product before purchase. Smile, she says. I do. No teeth. Softer. I adjust. Better. This is normal. This choreography. These corrections. I have long ago stopped feeling insulted by them. Or maybe I simply stopped recognizing the feeling. 23 years of marriage teaches you the path of least resistance. When we met, I was 19. I remember the smell of drafting paper and graphite on my fingers. I remember my professor calling my name after class. Roberto, that housing model, it's exceptional. Have you considered submitting it to the national competition? I had considered it. I had believed in it. That same year, I signed a prenup in a small law office with beige walls. Marta sat beside me, calm, reassuring. It's just protection, she said, squeezing my hand. My family insists. It won't matter. We're building everything together. The lawyer flipped pages quickly. Words blurred. I trusted her. I signed. I didn't understand that signing something at 19 could echo for decades. Where are you? Marta's voice pulls me back. Nowhere, I reply. That's not reassuring. I'm ready. She walks to the dresser and picks up her phone. Graciela Montez will be there tonight. I've heard the name all week. Millionaire investor. Strategic expansion capital. $200 million in liquid assets, according to Marta's breathless research. This deal positions Vanguard for international scaling, she says, checking her reflection. It changes everything. I nod. She looks at me again, eyes sharp. Don't embarrass me. I won't. You have a tendency to say self-deprecating things. I'm aware. Then don't. Yes, Marta. She freezes for a fraction of a second at the tone. Too compliant, perhaps, but then dismisses it. We move toward the front door. The house is immaculate, curated. Art chosen by her. Furniture chosen by her. Even the books on the coffee table are selected for aesthetic balance. Once, I suggested hanging one of my old architectural sketches in the hallway. She laughed gently. It's amateur, Roberto. Let's keep the house cohesive. The sketch disappeared into a drawer. Outside, she hands me the car keys. You're driving, she says. I need to review notes. Of course. The engine hums as we pull away. Streetlights streak across the windshield. She scrolls through her phone, murmuring figures under her breath. Valuation, liquidity timeline, projected returns. I glance at her profile, sharp, confident, unafraid of rooms full of powerful people. I used to walk into rooms like that too. After graduation, 3 architecture firms offered me positions. My social housing project had won a national award. They called it visionary, sustainable, scalable. Then Marta and I had dinner. Architecture is unstable, she said, stirring her wine. Long hours. Competitive. No guarantees. It's what I love. Love doesn't pay mortgages. We don't have a mortgage. We will. She leaned across the table, eyes earnest. You're brilliant, Roberto. But brilliance needs structure. Stability. Take something steady first. Build from there. The bookstore job was supposed to be temporary, just until something secure came along. Something secure never came. Or maybe I stopped looking. You're drifting again, Marta says from the passenger seat. Sorry. Focus on the road. Yes. We arrive at the venue, a glass tower piercing the night sky. Valet attendants in black uniforms open doors with rehearsed politeness. Inside, light spills from chandeliers like liquid gold. Before stepping out, Marta grips my wrist. Remember, stay in the corner, I say. She releases me. In the lobby, she transforms. Her posture sharpens, her smile widens. People greet her with admiration. Marta, congratulations on the quarterly numbers. Thank you, she says smoothly. We're just getting started. She introduces me twice. My husband, Roberto. He prefers a quiet life. I nod, smile softly. No teeth. Soon, she drifts away into a circle of executives. And I do what I always do. I move toward the edge of the room, the corner. A waiter offers champagne. I take a glass and hold it without drinking. Around me, conversations bloom, acquisitions, mergers, expansion strategies. I am present but irrelevant. Invisible but decorative. This is normal. This is marriage. This is stability. I catch my reflection in a mirrored column across the ballroom. A man in a well-fitted charcoal suit standing carefully out of the way. For a moment, I don't recognize him. Later, when we return home and the house is quiet, I will stand in front of the bedroom mirror again. I will loosen the tie she tightened. I will study the lines around my eyes. And I will barely recognize the man staring back. Chapter 2, The Performance. The ballroom sat 42 floors above the city, wrapped in glass from floor to ceiling. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond it, steel, light, ambition. From up here, everything looked clean and powerful. No noise, no poverty, no hesitation. Inside, the air smelled of expensive perfume and polished wood. Clusters of executives formed and dissolved like choreographed patterns. Laughter rose in controlled bursts. Crystal glasses chimed softly against each other. Every handshake seemed rehearsed. This wasn't just a party. It was a market, and everyone here was for sale. Marta stepped into the room beside me and changed. Her spine straightened. Her chin lifted. The softness she used at home disappeared. What replaced it was something brighter, sharper, more deliberate. Marta, someone called. She pivoted effortlessly. Daniel, she said warmly, extending her hand. You look relieved. Did the board finally approve the acquisition? He laughed. You always know. I'm making my business too, she replied. I watched her expression. Attentive, engaged, calculating. She tilted her head slightly when listening, touched a forearm lightly when emphasizing a point, maintained eye contact just long enough to imply importance. Magnetic. She moved to another group without missing a beat. Ricardo. She greeted a tall man with a silver tie. I heard congratulations are in order. We're negotiating, he replied. Of course you are, she smiled. You never close without leverage. They laughed. No one laughed like that with me. A woman in a red dress glanced at me. Polite smile. Assessment. Dismissal. Marta noticed and beckoned me with 2 fingers. I approached carefully. This is my husband, Roberto, she said smoothly. He prefers a quiet life. There it was, the line, delivered lightly, almost affectionately. The woman smiled. How lovely. Less stress that way. Yes, Marta answered before I could. He values simplicity. I nodded. I work at a bookstore, I added. Marta's hand pressed lightly against my back. Not enough for others to notice, but enough for me to feel the correction. How charming, the woman said, already looking past me. Marta turned back to her. We should discuss your firm's expansion into Sao Paulo. I have thoughts. And just like that, I no longer existed. I retreated to the edge of the room, the corner. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. I took one and held it. The bubbles climbed slowly to the surface. I did not drink. Around me, conversations overlapped. Promotion cycle coming next quarter. Private equity is circling. If Montez commits, the valuation doubles overnight. Montez. I had heard the name a dozen times in the past week. Graciela Montez. Investor. Strategic partner. 200 million in capital. The kind of person who didn't enter rooms, she reshaped them. Marta reappeared briefly, her perfume trailing behind her. Why are you standing so stiffly? She murmured without looking at me. I'm fine. You look uncomfortable. I am. She smiled at someone across the room while speaking through her teeth. Don't. I adjusted my shoulders. Remember your place, she whispered softly. Then she moved away again, already laughing at something a senior partner had said. I watched her work the room. She didn't chase conversations. She curated them, positioned herself near power, then slowly shifted closer. Asked questions that revealed weaknesses. Offered insights that sounded generous but established dominance. At one point, Ricardo raised his glass toward her. To Vanguard's rising star, he announced. She tilted her head modestly. We're all rising together. The room hummed with approval. I remained still. Two men nearby discussed promotions. If Montez backs this, one said, Marta's division becomes untouchable. She's ambitious, the other replied. You can see it in her eyes. Yes, the first said quietly. She doesn't tolerate dead weight. They both laughed. I wondered if I counted as dead weight. Across the ballroom, Marta caught my eye briefly, not warmly, not coldly, just checking that I remained where she had placed me. I gave a small nod. A younger couple drifted toward the corner. Are you with Vanguard? The man asked me politely. My wife is. Oh, he said. Operations? Bookstore, I replied. His smile faltered. Ah. Silence stretched awkwardly. His wife rescued him. That must be peaceful. It is, I said. They excused themselves within seconds. I looked down at the untouched champagne in my hand. The bubbles had faded. The music shifted, softer now, instrumental jazz filling the space between negotiations. At the far end of the ballroom, a cluster formed near the entrance. Executives subtly repositioned themselves. Spouses adjusted dresses. Ties were straightened. Marta moved swiftly toward the center. Her voice floated back to me. She's on her way up. The room's temperature seemed to change. Conversations lowered. Postures aligned. I stayed in my corner. This is what I was good at, occupying space without affecting it. A man near the bar checked his watch. She's never late. She's not late, another replied. She arrives precisely when she intends to. Marta smoothed her hair once, then again. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. I saw the anticipation in her eyes, not nervousness, but hunger. She turned briefly, scanning the room, making sure optics were perfect. Her gaze landed on me, still in the corner. Good. A staff member approached the center microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, voice crisp and controlled. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are honored to welcome a very special guest. The room stilled completely. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Marta stood perfectly poised, positioned just close enough to greet, just far enough to appear unassuming. My fingers tightened slightly around the stem of the glass. The staff member continued. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Graciela Montez. A murmur swept through the room. Admiration, calculation, expectation. Every head turned toward the entrance. The doors began to open. Chapter 3, The Woman Who Didn't Look at My Wife. The doors opened without drama. No flashing lights. No theatrical music. No exaggerated announcement. And yet the entire room shifted. Graciela Montez did not enter like someone seeking attention. She entered like someone accustomed to already having it. She wore black, not the glittering kind meant to impress, but the tailored, precise kind that suggested control. No excessive jewelry. No bright lipstick. Her hair pulled back cleanly. Every step measured. Every movement economical. She didn't scan the room. She assessed it. The executives closest to the entrance straightened instinctively. Conversations ended mid-sentence. The air that had been buzzing with competitive energy now felt carefully arranged. Marta moved first. Of course she did. Her smile bloomed instantly, warm, strategic, welcoming without being overeager. She stepped forward with perfect timing, hand extended, voice poised to greet. Ms. Montez, what an honor. Graciela didn't stop. She didn't slow. She didn't even look at her. The moment was so subtle, it almost escaped notice, a half-second of misalignment. Marta's hand remained suspended in the air, waiting for contact that never came. Ricardo stepped in smoothly, attempting to intercept. Graciela, he said confidently. Welcome. We've been, she passed him to. Not rudely, not dismissively, simply uninterested. A quiet ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Where was she going? I remained exactly where Marta had positioned me, in the corner, near a tall arrangement of white orchids and a mirrored column that reflected everything twice. My first thought was that she was heading toward someone behind me. I even glanced over my shoulder. No one stood there. When I turned back, she was already halfway across the ballroom. She walked without hesitation. The room parted for her instinctively. Executives shifted aside. Spouses stepped back. The music seemed to lower itself. Her gaze was fixed, not wandering, not calculating, certain, and it was aimed directly at me. My chest tightened. That wasn't possible. People like her did not walk toward people like me. I straightened unconsciously, unsure whether to move or remain still. The champagne glass in my hand felt suddenly heavy. Marta's voice floated from behind, tight and confused. Is she? No one answered her. Graciela stopped 3 feet in front of me. Up close, she looked even more composed. Her eyes were steady, observant, but not invasive. Not curious, recognizing. She studied my face, not as strangers do, as if confirming something. The room had fallen into a silence so complete that I could hear the faint hum of the ventilation system overhead. My throat felt dry. Excuse me, I began quietly, assuming she must be mistaken. She spoke before I could finish. Roberto Almeida. My name. Not hesitant. Not questioning. Certain. A sharp, collective intake of breath moved through the ballroom. I felt heat rise up my neck. My voice faltered. Yes. She stepped closer and extended her hand. Her grip was firm, controlled. Not dominant. Equal. I finally found you, she said. The words landed with strange weight. After 30 years. The sentence echoed in the silence like a dropped glass that never shattered. 30 years. I stared at her, searching for familiarity in features that seemed distant yet vaguely known. A memory stirred at the edge of my mind, lecture halls, design competitions, a judging panel. But it slipped away before I could grasp it. I'm sorry, I said, confusion tightening my voice. Have we met? Her eyes softened, not with pity, but with recognition. Not properly, she replied. Behind her, I could feel every gaze in the room drilling into my back. Marta's heels clicked rapidly against the floor as she approached. Her voice returned, light, controlled, but strained. Ms. Montez, she said, inserting herself beside us. You met my husband, I see. Graciela did not look at her. She did not release my hand immediately either. Yes, she answered calmly. I have. Marta's smile held, but something in her jaw tightened. How interesting, Marta continued smoothly. Roberto rarely attends these events. I know, Graciela replied. The certainty in her tone caused another ripple through the room. Ricardo stepped closer, clearly unsettled. Graciela, perhaps we could move toward, She raised a hand slightly, not sharply, not aggressively, but enough to stop a mid-sentence. Her attention remained on me. You look different, she said quietly. Different from what? 30 years ago. The phrase pulsed in my mind. My heart began beating harder, unevenly. I'm afraid you have the wrong person, I said, my voice smaller than I intended. She tilted her head, just slightly. No, she said. I don't. The conviction in her tone was unshakable. Marta laughed softly, a polished social sound. This is unexpected, she said. Roberto leads a very simple life. I'm sure you must be thinking of someone else. Again, Graciela did not look at her. I am not, she replied. The ballroom felt smaller now, tighter. My palm still rested in hers. Her grip was warm, steady, grounding in a way that confused me. No one had held my hand like that in years. Not to guide, not to correct, just to connect. Roberto Almeida, she repeated, her eyes searching mine. Architecture, class of 1995. The word hit me like a physical impact. Architecture. My fingers twitched slightly in her grasp. Marta's smile faltered, just enough for those watching closely to notice. I think, Marta said carefully, there must be some misunderstanding. There was a faint murmur behind us now. Executives shifting, whispering. The polished rhythm of the evening had fractured. Graciela finally released my hand, but she did not step back. She remained exactly where she was, facing me, as though the rest of the room had ceased to exist. I've been looking for you, she said. The words felt impossible. No one had looked for me in decades. I barely looked for myself. Marta's complexion had lost color. The confidence that carried her through every negotiation seemed suspended, waiting for footing that was no longer there. The silence stretched. Thick, uncomfortable, unavoidable. And for the first time since entering that ballroom, I was no longer invisible. The room froze. She shook my hand. I finally found you. After 30 years. Marta went pale. Silence. Chapter 4, the name I had before I disappeared. The silence in the ballroom did not break. It cracked. Murmurs began, low and uncertain. Marta's hand touched my arm, fingers pressing hard enough to signal ownership. Perhaps we should speak somewhere quieter, she said smoothly, though her voice carried strain beneath the polish. Graciela's eyes never left mine. Yes, she agreed calmly. We should. Marta opened her mouth to follow, but Graciela finally turned toward her, not with hostility, not with warmth. Just clarity. I'd like a private moment with Roberto. It was not a request. The room noticed. Marta's smile held, but her fingers withdrew from my arm slowly, as if releasing something that might float away. Of course, she said. Don't be long. The words were directed at me, not at her. Graciela gestured lightly toward a corridor off the main ballroom. I followed without fully understanding why my feet were moving. The music resumed behind us, hesitant at first, then louder, as though the party was attempting to stitch itself back together. We entered a smaller lounge room lined with dark wood panels and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The door closed softly behind us. The quiet felt different here, not oppressive, focused. She stood across from me, studying my face with an intensity that felt surgical, not unkind, but deliberate. Or shall I call you Bateau? She asked. The nickname hit me harder than my full name had. Bateau. No one had called me that in decades. My chest tightened. How do you... I stopped, my voice uneven. How do you know that name? Her lips curved faintly. Because 30 years ago, every professor in the architecture faculty couldn't stop saying it. The room shifted in my mind. Not this room. Another one. Drafting tables. Rolled blueprints. Sunlight slanting across white models of buildings that had not yet been built. Architecture school, 1995. I was 20. And unstoppable. They said you were reckless. Graciela continued, walking slowly toward the window. Visionary. Difficult. Brilliant. I swallowed. That's exaggerated. No, she said, turning back to face me. It isn't. The memories surfaced whether I invited them or not. The National Design Competition. My social housing project. Stacked modular units designed to reduce cost without sacrificing dignity. Shared courtyards. natural ventilation systems, scalable infrastructure for underserved communities. I remembered standing in a crowded auditorium as my name was announced. First place. Applause crashing around me like a wave. Professor Almeida gripping my shoulders. You're going to change the way cities grow, Roberto. I had believed him. I was on the review panel that year, Graciela said quietly. The information stunned me. You were. I was younger, she replied, investing in emerging talent. Your design was the only one that addressed poverty without treating it like an aesthetic problem. My throat felt tight. You argued with the judges, she added, almost amused. You said architecture without social responsibility was cowardice. He crept up my neck. That sounds arrogant. It sounded necessary. I turned away, pacing slowly. The room felt too small to contain the past she was reopening. I was a student, I said. Students believe in impossible things. You weren't naive, she corrected. You were certain. Certain? Yes. I had been. 3 firms contacted me within a month of graduation. Formal letters, interview invitations, salaries I could barely comprehend at 20. One was international. One specialized in sustainable development. One offered immediate project leadership under mentorship. You had offers, Graciela continued. 3 of them. I stopped walking. How do you know that? I do my research. Her tone was not boastful. It was factual. I remember the night, I told Marta. She had been sitting across from me at a small cafe, still working in HR at one of those firms. It's competitive, she had said gently. Architecture burns people out. It's what I've trained for. You're talented, Roberto, but talent isn't stability. I remembered defending myself. I can build something meaningful. And what if you fail? She asked softly. What if the projects dry up? What if you're replaced by someone younger? Think long term. Her hand had rested over mine. We need security. Security. The words sounded responsible. Mature. I was 19 when I signed the prenup. 20 when I declined the job offers. Just for now, I had told myself. Something temporary. The bookstore job was meant to be transitional. A few months while I evaluated options. Months became years. Years became routine. You declined them all, Graciela said quietly. I nodded. Why? The question lingered between us. I thought I was being practical. And were you? I let out a short breath that felt almost like a laugh. I thought stability was maturity. And now? I didn't answer. She stepped closer, not invading, closing distance intentionally. You didn't just change careers, she said. You disappeared. The words pierced cleanly. I didn't disappear, I said automatically. Her gaze held mine steadily. You vanished from every professional record. No portfolio submissions. No industry conferences. No licensing exams. Nothing. I felt exposed in a way I hadn't expected. That was a long time ago. It was, she agreed. But people like you don't just fade. I shook my head. You overestimate me. No, she said calmly. You underestimate yourself. The room felt warm. Unsettling. I chose a different life, I insisted. Did you? Her voice wasn't accusing. It was curious. Images surfaced. Marta reviewing my paychecks. Marta reorganizing our budget. Marta laughing softly when I once mentioned taking evening design courses. Why, she had asked. You don't need that. I had stopped mentioning it. You vanished, Graciela repeated quietly. The word echoed again. I stared out at the skyline beyond the glass. The city lights shimmered like unfinished blueprints. I didn't vanish, I said finally. My voice sounded distant, even to me. I surrendered. The admission surprised us both. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush to fill the silence. She allowed it to sit there. Heavy, honest. I ran a hand over my face. I thought I was choosing responsibility, I said. Security. Marriage. And what did it cost you? The question landed without cruelty. Everything. My confidence. My certainty. My voice. I looked at my hands, steady, capable hands that once shaped buildings from nothing but graphite and conviction. Now they shelved novels alphabetically. You had vision, she said softly. You had confidence. You had a future. Had. Past tense. The weight of it pressed down on me. The music from the ballroom drifted faintly through the walls, distant, irrelevant. You disappeared, she said once more. I swallowed. I stopped designing. I whispered. Chapter 5. The truth no one said out loud. The word lingered in the air between us. I stopped designing. It sounded smaller now that it had been spoken aloud. Smaller than the truth deserved. Graciela didn't respond immediately. She walked toward the sideboard against the wall, poured water into 2 crystal glasses, and handed one to me. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate, almost careful. Do you know what I do, Roberto? She asked. You invest, I replied. She tilted her head slightly. That's what the newspapers say. She took a slow sip before continuing. I built my fortune investing in talent. Not trends, not brands. Talent. I look for people who see what others ignore. Her eyes held mine steadily. 30 years ago, you were one of them. The words settled somewhere deep in my chest, uncomfortable and warm at the same time. I was a student, I repeated weakly. You were already thinking beyond yourself, she corrected. Your housing project wasn't decorative. It was functional, scalable. It addressed dignity. I remembered standing in front of that model, cardboard, glass, miniature courtyards, explaining how families could share resources without losing privacy. I remembered believing it mattered. I remember you arguing that profit margins shouldn't erase humanity, she continued. That housing wasn't just structure, it was identity. I swallowed. You've done your homework. I've done more than that, she said quietly. She set her glass down. I've been searching for you. The statement felt surreal. Searching. I never forgot your name, she said. When I began building my own firm, I made a list of young designers who had potential beyond convention. You were on it. I stared at her. I assumed you'd surface somewhere significant. A firm, a competition, a publication. She paused. You didn't. A quiet settled between us. So I asked questions, she continued. Former professors, alumni records, licensing boards. I felt heat creep into my face. You didn't have to, I wanted to. Her tone was simple, direct. I thought perhaps you had changed countries, or industries, or that I had simply missed your rise. Her gaze sharpened slightly. Instead, I found nothing. Nothing. The word echoed uncomfortably. I hired investigators. That startled me. You what? I needed clarity, she said evenly. It's what I do when something doesn't make sense. A thin line formed between my brows. That seems excessive. Not when you recognize talent, she replied. The city lights flickered faintly behind her through the glass. They found you, she continued, working a bookstore, married to a senior executive at Vanguard Consulting. My grip tightened slightly around the glass. That's not a crime. No, she agreed. It's not. Her voice remained calm, not judgmental, observant, which is why I had to ask myself a different question. She stepped closer. What happened? The question felt heavier than any accusation. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She watched me carefully. Has your wife ever supported your architecture? The question hung between us. Simple, precise. My silence answered before I could. I looked down at the water in my glass, watching it tremble slightly in my hand. She believes in stability, I said finally. That wasn't my question. I exhaled slowly. There were times, I began carefully, when I mentioned taking evening courses, just to refresh. And she said it wasn't necessary. Did you go? No, why not? I hesitated. She manages our finances. Her eyebrow lifted almost imperceptibly, meaning I don't make large expenditures without discussing them. Courses are expenditures now. Her tone wasn't mocking, just precise. She handles the investments, the savings, the retirement planning, and your income. It goes into the joint account, which she oversees. Yes, she nodded once. And when you mentioned designing again, I let out a short breath. She said I was romanticizing youth. And she said architecture is unstable. And she said talent isn't enough. The words tasted familiar, predictable. And did you believe her? Graciela asked quietly. I stared at the floor. I trusted her. Trust, she said softly, is not the same as surrender. Images surfaced uninvited. The night, I pulled out an old sketch pad after years of neglect. Marta walking into the living room, pausing as she saw me bent over the coffee table. What's that? She asked. Just something I used to work on. She glanced at the drawing. It's impractical, she said lightly. Where would you even build something like that? I had laughed awkwardly. She had laughed too, and the sketchpad had closed. Another memory. I once mentioned reconnecting with an old classmate who had opened a small firm. What would you talk about? She asked. Architecture. She smiled faintly. That chapter is over, Roberto. And I had nodded. Did she encourage you to maintain friendships from school? Graciela asked. Not really, I admitted. We moved. Schedules changed. Oh, but did she prefer you close? The word struck harder than I expected. Close. Contained, she clarified. The room felt warmer now. She built her career, I said, defensive without intending to be. It wasn't easy. I'm not questioning her ambition, Graciela replied calmly. I'm questioning the dynamic. Her eyes held mine steadily. There is partnership. There is compromise. She paused. And then there is control. The word landed softly, but with weight. I chose this life, I insisted. Did you? The repetition again. I signed the prenup, I said quietly. I accepted the job. You were 19. I was an adult. You were influenced. I felt something shift inside my chest, subtle, unsettling. Has she ever attended an architecture conference with you? Graciela asked. No. Has she ever introduced you as an architect? No. Has she ever funded your return to school? No. Each answer felt smaller than the last. Has she ever said she believes you could build something meaningful? The silence stretched longer this time. I searched my memory desperately. There were compliments. You're kind. You're steady. You're safe. But not that. No, I admitted. Graciela inhaled slowly. This is not partnership, Roberto. Her voice was not loud, but it was firm, not love. She held my gaze. Control. The word settled fully this time. Financial dependency, she continued quietly. Emotional suppression. My pulse thudded in my ears. I wanted to argue, to defend, to explain, but the memories aligned too cleanly. The budget spreadsheets, the gentle dismissals, the laughter at unfinished drafts. The word impractical repeated so often it had carved itself into me. You were not weak, she said softly. Something tightened in my throat. You were contained. Chapter 6, The Public Collapse. The door to the private lounge opened without a knock. Marta didn't step in. She entered. Her heels struck the hardwood floor with controlled precision, but the restraint in her posture was cracking at the edges. There you are, she said, her voice light but stretched thin. They're waiting for you, Ms. Montes. Ricardo is preparing the presentation. Graciela didn't move. I won't need a presentation, she replied calmly. Marta's smile sharpened. I assure you, our projections are comprehensive. I'm sure they are. Something in Graciela's tone made the air shift. Marta's eyes flicked briefly toward me, assessing, calculating, then back to Graciela. If there's a concern, Marta continued smoothly, we can address it at the table. Yes, Graciela said. Let's do that. She turned toward the door. I followed instinctively. Marta remained a half step behind, her presence suddenly less commanding, more alert. When we re-entered the ballroom, conversations thinned immediately. Heads turned. The earlier confusion had not dissolved. It had fermented. Ricardo approached with a tablet in hand, smile rehearsed. Excellent, he said. Shall we begin? Graciela didn't take the tablet. Instead, she moved toward the center of the room, not the microphone, not the stage, just enough to command sight lines. Her composure was quiet, controlled. Before we proceed, she said, her voice neither raised nor strained, yet carrying effortlessly across the room, I would like to clarify my position. The hum of conversation died completely. Ricardo's smile faltered slightly. Marta stood at his side now, shoulders squared. We're listening, Marta said confidently. Graciela folded her hands lightly in front of her. I will not be investing in Vanguard Consulting. The words dropped into the room like a stone into glass. Silence fractured. Ricardo blinked. I'm sorry. I will not be investing, she repeated evenly. Murmurs erupted immediately, hushed, sharp, incredulous. Marta's face did not collapse. It tightened. There must be a misunderstanding, she said calmly. We've been in preliminary discussions for months. There is no misunderstanding, Graciela replied. Ricardo stepped forward. May we ask why? Graciela's gaze shifted briefly across the room, not scanning for approval, not seeking reaction, but acknowledging witnesses. I do not partner, she said clearly, with those who erase potential. The sentence landed with surgical precision. Marta's breath caught, barely noticeable, but I saw it. I beg your pardon? Marta replied, voice controlled but edged. I invest in talent, Graciela continued. I cultivate it. I protect it. And I refuse to align myself with organizations or individuals who suppress it for convenience. The room had gone so quiet that even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Marta's composure hardened. If this is about a professional disagreement, she said, I would appreciate specifics. Graciela turned slightly, just enough for her next words to include me in the frame of the room. This is not professional, she said. The weight of attention shifted. I felt it like heat across my skin. Marta followed her gaze. For the first time since entering the ballroom, she looked at me not as placement, but as variable. You've misunderstood something, Marta said carefully. No, Graciela replied. I haven't. She stepped aside, a subtle but deliberate repositioning that brought me fully into the open. I spent 30 years searching for an architect whose work demonstrated rare vision, she said. A man whose social housing design challenged an entire industry. Whispers rippled outward. Architecture? Someone muttered. Marta's expression flickered, then reset. My husband works at a bookstore, she said evenly. He is an architect, Graciela corrected. The statement hung. Ricardo looked between us, confusion turning to suspicion. This is highly irregular, he murmured. Graciela ignored him. She looked directly at me. Roberto, she said, voice steady. I would like to make you an offer. My pulse thundered in my ears. $5 million in initial capital, she continued. A full development team. Legal, engineering, sustainability consultants. Complete infrastructure. The room inhaled collectively. To revive your social housing project, she finished. On your terms. The silence was no longer confused. It was stunned. Marta's restraint shattered. This is absurd, she snapped, stepping forward. You cannot be serious. I am entirely serious. He hasn't practiced in decades, Marta shot back. He lacks licensing, portfolio continuity, all solvable, Graciela said calmly. You don't know him, Marta insisted. I know enough. The tension in the room thickened. Marta turned toward me fully now, her voice dropping lower, sharper. Roberto, say something. I swallowed. Words felt dangerous. This is manipulation, Marta continued, turning back to Graciela. You're attempting to destabilize my family to make a point. I'm offering him opportunity, Graciela replied. He signed a prenup, Marta snapped. He owns nothing. Not this house, not the investments. If he walks away, he leaves with nothing. The threat hung naked in the air. Several executives shifted uncomfortably. I felt something click inside my chest. Nothing. She was right. I already owned nothing. My name wasn't on the house. My salary barely registered in our accounts. My life had been curated, structured, managed. What are you doing? Marta demanded of me, her voice tight. You're embarrassing us. Us. Or her. I can contest the offer, she continued. I can block any partnership. I can make sure no firm touches you. The old fear stirred instinctively. Financial ruin, isolation, dependence. Then a strange clarity followed. I was already dependent, already isolated, already invisible. What else could she take? I don't know if I loved you. I heard myself say. The words startled even me. Marta froze. I don't know, I continued slowly, if I loved you or if I was trained to obey you. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Marta stared at me as if I had spoken a foreign language. Roberto, she whispered, not commanding, not strategic, but disbelieving. I turned toward Graciela. Her expression was not triumphant. It was steady. She reached in her purse and withdrew a simple white card. No flourish, just placement. She held it out. My hand hesitated only briefly before taking it. The paper felt heavier than it should. The room shifted. Subtly. Power rebalanced. Executives who had surrounded Marta now stepped back half a pace, recalibrating. Ricardo avoided her eyes. Marta opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time in 23 years, she had no script, and she stood there, speechless. Chapter 7. The People Who Remembered Me. The party did not recover. It continued, technically. Music resumed. Glasses clinked again. Conversations restarted in cautious tones. But something fundamental had shifted. I stood near the edge of the ballroom, Graciella's card still resting in my palm like a foreign object. Marta had moved across the room, pulled into a tight circle with Ricardo and 2 board members. Her face was composed again, but too composed, brittle porcelain stretched over fracture lines. People looked at me differently now. Not warmly yet, but curiously, as if I had been mislabeled. Graciella reappeared at my side without announcement. "Walk with me," she said gently. It wasn't a command, but I followed. We moved toward a quieter section near the balcony doors where smaller conversations were forming, not the loud executive clusters, but quieter, observant groups. "Roberto," she said, "there are a few people I'd like you to meet." I almost laughed at the absurdity. For decades, I had been introduced as an accessory. Now I was being introduced as possibility. A woman in a tailored cream suit turned as we approached. Her posture was sharp, confident, but her eyes softened when they landed on me. "Carmen," Graciela said, "this is Roberto Almeida." The woman stared at me for half a second. Then her eyes widened. "No," she breathed. I blinked. "Carmen Ruiz," she said, stepping closer. "Architecture, 95. The memory struck slowly, study tables buried in coffee cups. Heated debates over structural integrity versus aesthetic daring. "Carmen," I said uncertainly. She laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "Bateau." The nickname landed again, but this time it came wrapped in warmth. "You're alive," she said bluntly. I felt my mouth twitch into an unfamiliar shape. "I suppose I am." She folded her arms, studying me critically. "We thought you'd end up on magazine covers." "I work at a bookstore," I replied automatically. She rolled her eyes. "I'm not asking what you do for income." The directness startled me. Carmen had been intense even in college, sharp-minded, always arguing, always preparing for law school. "I'm a family attorney now," she said. "Mostly high-net-worth cases." Of course she was. She extended her hand, but instead of a formal shake, she squeezed my forearm briefly. "We tried finding you, you know." The statement landed gently. "I didn't know that." "Alonso asked about you every year at reunions," she said. "Alonso?" As if summoned, a familiar voice answered behind me. "He's right here." I turned. Alonso Vargas looked older, grayer at the temples, broader through the shoulders, but his grin was unchanged. "You disappeared, man," he said, pulling me into a quick, firm hug before I could react. No one had hugged me unexpectedly in years. "You remember the housing model?" he continued without waiting. "The one with the stacked courtyards?" I nodded slowly. "You made us redo our entire thesis drafts," he said, "because suddenly everything felt small next to yours." Another figure approached, Sophia Mendez, her once wild curls now tied back professionally. "You used to sketch until sunrise," she said. "We'd find you asleep over your drafting table." They weren't mocking. They weren't exaggerating. They were remembering. "You argued with Professor Almeida about modular ventilation systems," Alonso added. "You were right, by the way." A strange pressure built in my chest. "You remember too much," I muttered. "We remember enough," Sophia corrected. Carmen tilted her head slightly. "Why didn't you sit for your licensing exam?" The question was neutral, not accusatory. "I got busy." "With what?" Alonso asked gently. I didn't answer. Graciela stepped in quietly. "He prioritized stability," she said. There was something in her tone that made Carmen's expression sharpen slightly. "Stability," Carmen repeated carefully. "Yes," I said. "I made choices." "No one's judging you," Sophia said softly. That, more than anything, almost broke me. They weren't measuring me against who I had been. They were welcoming whoever stood in front of them now. "Professor Almeida still uses your housing concept as a case study," Alonso added casually. I stared at him. "What?" He says it was the last time he saw someone designed from conviction instead of ambition. The words felt too large to hold. Graciela observed quietly, letting the reconnection unfold without steering it. After a moment, she reached into her purse again. "Roberto," she said, handing me a small folded card separate from the one I already held. "This has my private number." I looked at it, handwritten, not printed. "No assistance," she added. "Direct line." The gesture felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with trust. "And this," she continued, placing something heavier in my hand. A small brass key. I stared at it. "There's a guest apartment 2 blocks from here," she said. "Fully furnished. Discreet. Available if you need space to think." Carmen's eyes flicked briefly toward me, assessing, not intruding. "You won't be alone," she said quietly. The implications settled between us. "Marta, the house. The life structured around containment. This is not pressure," Graciela clarified. "It's option. Option. A word I hadn't felt in years." Alonso clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Call us," he said, "even if it's just coffee." Sophia nodded. "We're not 19 anymore. We understand detours." Detours. That sounded kinder than surrender. Across the ballroom, Marta's gaze locked onto me. Not furious. Not yet. But calculating. For the first time, I didn't feel immediately compelled to move toward her. The music swelled again. Laughter resumed in cautious waves. But in this small circle near the balcony, something quieter and stronger had formed. Recognition, not of who I used to be, but of who I could still become. I slipped Graciela's private number into my inside jacket pocket, and I closed my fingers around the brass key. It was cool, solid, real. For years, I had carried nothing that symbolized choice. Tonight, I carried two. The card, the key, the future, the escape. Marta's voice echoed faintly across the room as she resumed damage control with the board. I felt fear, yes, but beneath it, something unfamiliar stirred. Support. Not control. Not correction. Support. I slid the key into my pocket, and I held it tightly there. Chapter 8, The Drive Home. The parking garage felt colder than it should have. Concrete swallowed the echo of their footsteps. Marta walked ahead of me, her heels striking the ground in sharp, furious bursts. I followed at a distance that had defined our marriage for years, close enough to belong to her, far enough to never truly stand beside her. Neither of us spoke. She reached the car first and yanked the door open harder than necessary. The slam reverberated through the hollow structure like a warning shot. I slid into the passenger seat. That alone felt different. I usually drove, but tonight she did. The engine roared to life. She reversed too fast, tires screeching slightly against painted concrete. Her jaw was locked tight. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel as if she could bend it into submission. Street lights streaked across the windshield as we exited the garage and merged into traffic. The city buzzed around us, oblivious to the quiet implosion unfolding inside this vehicle. I watched the passing buildings blur. The silence wasn't empty. It was charged, heavy, dangerous. "You embarrass me." Her voice cut through the air without warning. I didn't answer immediately. "I embarrassed you?" I finally asked, turning my head slowly toward her. "Yes." She didn't look at me, standing there like some lost puppy while she paraded you around like a project. She didn't parade me. She humiliated me, Marta snapped. In front of my partners. In front of Ricardo. In front of everyone. She made a business decision. She attacked my company. She said she doesn't partner with people who erase potential. The words lingered in the space between us. Marta's grip tightened. "That woman knows nothing about us. Doesn't she?" She shot me a look then, sharp and disbelieving. "Don't start." "I'm not starting." My voice stayed calm. Strangely calm. "I'm thinking." "Thinking?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Now you're thinking?" Traffic slowed at a red light. The glow washed over her face, painting it crimson. "I saved you," she said. I stared at her profile. "You were brilliant, Roberto." "Yes." "Talented. Passionate." Her voice softened, not kindly, but strategically. But passion doesn't pay mortgages. It doesn't survive recessions. It doesn't survive reality. You think I would have failed? I know you would have. The light turned green. She accelerated immediately. You were idealistic. You wanted to build affordable housing for families who couldn't even qualify for loans. You wanted investors to accept lower returns for social good. That's not how the world works. That's not how your world works. She exhaled sharply. I built stability for us. For you. That bookstore job? It was temporary. You agreed. I remember. You were overwhelmed, she continued. 3 firms offering positions. Different cities. Different paths. You couldn't choose. You would have collapsed under the pressure. You chose for me. I guided you. You redirected me. I protected you. The car turned into our neighborhood. Street after street of identical houses. Safe. Predictable. Structured. You think architecture would have made you happy? She asked suddenly. You think rejection, unstable contracts, begging for funding would have made you happier than this? She gestured around the interior of the car, leather seats, polished dashboard, subtle luxury. This house, this life, I built it. With my surrender, I said quietly. She braked harder than necessary at a stop sign. That's unfair. Is it? We pulled into the driveway. The garage door rose slowly, mechanically, like a curtain revealing a stage neither of us wanted to step onto. She parked, but didn't turn off the engine. The hum filled the silence. I gave you structure, she said. You needed it. There it was. Not accusation. Not anger. Certainty. I needed control. I asked. You needed direction. You needed obedience. Her head snapped toward me. That's not true. Isn't it? I opened the car door and stepped out before she could answer. The night air hit my face, cool, clarifying. Inside the house, the lights were off. Marta entered first and flipped them on. The familiar living room came into view. Beige couch, glass coffee table, framed art chosen by her, not me. Every detail curated. Every decision approved. She set her purse down sharply. You're letting that woman manipulate you, she said. She sees a wounded ego, and she's exploiting it. She remembered my project. So what? People remember things. It doesn't mean they're viable. She searched for me. That's obsession, not admiration. She invested $5 million. She offered. Marta corrected quickly. Nothing is signed. Her voice rose. You're not going to throw away 23 years because some billionaire flattered you. Flattered? Yes. She told you what you wanted to hear. That you were brilliant. That you were suppressed. That you were contained. The last word slipped out before she could stop it. We both heard it. Contained. I stepped closer. You believed I needed control. Her silence answered first. Then, yes. The word wasn't shouted. It was admitted. You were impulsive. Emotional. You chased ideas without calculating risk. I had to balance you. Balance, I repeated. Yes. Or limit. She shook her head, frustrated tears gathering in her eyes. Not fragile tears, but angry ones. You would have drowned without me. You buried me, I said. Her breath caught. You erased me. That's dramatic. You decided who I was. I refined who you were. You rewrote me. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. I thought you were grateful, she whispered. I was compliant. Because you trusted me. Because I stopped trusting myself. Her expression faltered. That's not my fault, isn't it? She stepped back, crossing her arms defensively. I believed you needed control, she said again, firmer now. I believed that if I didn't take the lead, everything would fall apart. I carried the weight. I made the hard decisions. I absorbed the risk. And I absorbed the silence. She blinked. I never stopped you from sketching. You laughed at the drafts. I was teasing. You called them impractical. They were. You discouraged the courses. They were expensive. You controlled the accounts. I managed finances. You isolated me from colleagues. They weren't contributing to our future. Each justification came quickly, efficiently, as if she had rehearsed them long ago. You can't comprehend losing control, I said. Her eyes widened. This isn't about control. This is about us. No, I said softly. It's about who I was before us. She looked almost frightened now. You're not leaving, she said. Not a question, but a demand disguised as one. I don't know what I'm doing yet. You're confused. I'm aware. You're emotional. I'm awake. The word hung between us. She stared at me, like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. The house felt smaller, the walls closer, the air thinner. For 23 years, I had believed every major decision had been mutual, carefully discussed, logically aligned. But standing there, replaying memories with new clarity, job offers declined, opportunities postponed, ambitions minimized, I saw the pattern. Not partnership, direction. Not discussion, correction. Not guidance, containment. I looked at the framed wedding photo on the wall. I remembered that day clearly. I had thought I was choosing love. Now I wondered if I had been choosing instruction. Marta's voice softened. We're stable, Roberto. We're secure. That matters. Yes, I said quietly. It's not glamorous, but it's safe. Safe. The word echoed strangely. Safety had cost something. It had cost me something. And as I stood there, watching the woman who had shaped every turn of my adult life, a realization settled over me like cold rain. I had not made a single independent decision in 23 years. Chapter 9, The Night of Fear. The apartment was quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of absence of expectation, of authority, of direction. The city hummed faintly outside the windows, distant sirens and the occasional honk threading through the night. I sat alone at the small dining table in the guest apartment Graciela had arranged. The lights above were soft, warm, forgiving. I had not needed forgiveness in years, not from her, not from anyone. In front of me, 3 items lay like anchors to a life I'd almost forgotten. The crisp white card with her number, the brass key to the apartment, and a pile of old sketchbooks. I picked up the card first, turning it over in my hands. It was just a card, just a name and number, but it pulsed with possibility. The ink felt alive, as though it carried a promise of a life I had been too cautious to imagine. The key followed. Cold brass, solid, tangible. It opened a door, yes, but it also symbolized escape. Not just from a house, from a marriage, from a role I had performed for decades. Escape from my own suffocation. And then the sketchbooks, leather-bound, worn at the edges. Pages filled with lines, angles, models of buildings I had imagined. Some crude, some meticulous. Each page a fragment of me that had been buried beneath practicality, under years of obedience and safety. I ran my fingers over the paper. Dust lifted in faint motes in the soft light. I could smell the faint ink and graphite. Memories stirred, as if the pages were whispering. I remembered the prenup. I remember being 19, seated at a polished wooden table, a young man with trust and love swelling in his chest, a naive confidence I thought was strength. Marta had sat across from me, all charm and sharp efficiency, explaining the terms at a pace I could barely keep up with. You'll be secure. Nothing will be left to chance. It's just practical, she had said, sliding the pen across the table. I had nodded, signed without truly understanding. Agreed because I wanted to believe that love could exist in partnership with guidance. That security was protection. That obedience was affection. I had believed her, and now I sat in a small apartment, decades later, realizing I had not made a single independent decision in 23 years. Fear tightened around my chest. A cold, thin thing. I could fail. I could attempt to revive my designs and stumble. Embarrassed, inadequate. Public humiliation, financial ruin, ridicule. What if I fail? I whispered into the dark. My own voice startled me, sounding unfamiliar, fragile. But then another thought crept forward. Possibility, ambition, the faint thrill of risk. What if I succeed? The whisper turned into a murmur, louder as hope tangled with fear. I felt a stirring, a pulse I had not felt since my early 20s. That mixture of pride and daring, that sense that I could shape something tangible, meaningful beyond myself. I held the pencil in my hand again, the graphite tip sharp, ready. I turned the first page of a sketchbook, the edges curling faintly from years of neglect. Lines emerged, tentative at first, straight, precise. Slowly, curves formed, angles intersected, shadows suggested depth. Each stroke brought me closer to who I was, who I had been. The fear receded, replaced by a cautious exhilaration. I remembered Marta's laughter in my drafts, the words impractical echoing from living room walls I no longer owned. But they felt smaller now, distant. They had lost power over me. Outside, the city continued to pulse with indifferent life. Inside, I was alive again in a way I had almost forgotten. The weight of expectation, the suffocating predictability, the carefully constructed obedience, it all felt removable, like a coat I had been forced to wear for decades. I paused and looked at the card again. The brass key, the sketchbook. Each represented choice. Each represented possibility. Fear lingered, but it no longer dominated. It had a companion now. Courage, fragile but undeniable. I whispered to the quiet room. I am more afraid of dying invisible. The pencil hovered above the page, and then finally it touched down. Lines spread. Shadows fell. Models took shape. For the first time in decades, I was designing again. Chapter 10, The Decision. The morning sunlight seeped through the thin curtains, spilling across the bedroom in long, golden streaks. The quiet hum of the city outside felt distant, almost irrelevant. Inside, the air was thick with tension, though no words had been exchanged yet. I stood by the dresser, straightening the folds of my shirt. The fabric felt different today, lighter somehow, as if it carried a new weight, responsibility, possibility, autonomy. Marta stirred from the bed, eyes half open, brows knitted in that familiar mix of expectation and impatience. "You look late," she said, voice soft but edged with anticipation. "I'm awake," I replied simply. My tone was calm, deliberate. Her gaze sharpened. After last night, you should apologize. For embarrassing me at the party." I turned to face her fully, standing taller than I had in decades, a presence she had not been used to seeing. "I'm not apologizing," I said plainly. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something like uncertainty. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said," I continued. "I will not apologize for being recognized for my work, for being offered an opportunity one never allowed myself to pursue. I will not apologize for deciding to act on it." Marta sat up fully now, shoulders tense, hands gripping the sheets. "Roberto, this is sudden. You can't just—" "I'm not asking for permission," I interrupted gently. "I'm telling you." She blinked, caught between disbelief and disbelief sharpened by frustration. You're leaving?" "I am choosing," I said, letting each word land. "Not leaving in anger, not out of spite. I'm choosing myself." The silence stretched. A thin thread of panic ran through her posture, but her mouth remained closed. She had no script for this. None of the rehearsed objections, the subtle manipulations, the threats she had relied on for decades could pierce the clarity in my eyes. I walked to the dresser and picked up my sketch folder, worn but neatly organized, the pages slightly curled at the edges from being ignored for so long. I placed it carefully under my arm. Next, I reached into my pocket and felt the small white card, Graciella's number, now a lifeline rather than a reminder of risk. I tucked it into my sketch folder, letting its presence anchor me. Finally, I held the brass key to the apartment Graciella had provided. Cool, solid, heavy in my palm. It wasn't just a key. It was freedom, option, choice. My life outside the structures Marta had imposed. Marta's eyes followed each movement. Her lips parted, then closed again. "You can't just," she began and stopped. She realized mid-word that no argument, no manipulation, no logical appeal could sway me today. I stepped toward the door, each movement deliberate. The room, our bedroom, felt suddenly like a cage I was leaving for the first time in decades. "I'm meeting Graciella today," I said softly, yet firmly, "to discuss the project, to see where this path leads. No anger, no begging, no pleading, just clarity." Marta's hand twitched slightly as if she wanted to reach for me, but she didn't. Her posture shifted subtly, a mix of disbelief and fear. For the first time, she saw me differently, not compliant, not obedient, not the quiet fixture she had curated for her life. She saw someone who had reclaimed himself. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years lift slightly with each step. The hallway stretched before me, familiar and foreign at once. I ran my fingers lightly along the door frame, a gesture of acknowledgement, not attachment. The city waited outside. The streets, the sun, the life I had ignored for decades. They were all mine now, to confront, to explore. I glanced once at Marta, standing rigid by the bed, her carefully constructed composure slipping in ways I had never allowed myself to notice. I don't know what will happen next, I admitted. I don't know if I succeed or stumble. But I do know I have a try. She swallowed hard, lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes flicked to the sketch folder, then the card, then the key, each symbol a reminder of her loss of control. And with that, I realized the marriage I had known for 23 years had already fractured. The foundation she had built on control and obedience could not withstand the weight of my awakening. I moved to the door. Each step was deliberate, measured. My heart pounded, yes, but it was not fear alone. It was excitement, possibility, and a strange serenity I hadn't known I could feel. Outside the door, the hallway seemed longer than I remembered. I held the sketch folder tightly, the card tucked within its pages, the key warm against my fingers. I paused at the top of the stairs, looking back once. Marta remained in the bedroom, a statue of controlled disbelief. I did not look away from her. I did not need her approval. I did not seek it. The door to the apartment closed softly behind me. Not shut, not final, but enough. The morning air greeted me with crisp clarity. The city stretched in all directions, streets, buildings, opportunities. The life I had lost, the life I had buried beneath compliance and security, seemed tangible for the first time in decades. I walked down the steps with deliberate care, each footfall a small assertion of autonomy. For the first time in 30 years, someone had seen me. For the first time in 23 years, I chose myself. I held the sketch folder close, the brass key heavy in my hand, the card secure in its pages. Each object a symbol. The folder of my past, the key to my present, the card to my future. The street before me was alive. Cars moved with indifferent precision. People hurried to work. Cafes opened with the aroma of morning coffee. But I moved differently, deliberately, confidently, awake. The sun rose higher, painting the buildings in light that seemed almost exaggerated in its clarity. Shadows fell behind me, long and unclaimed. I walked past the familiar corner store where Marta insisted we shop for convenience, past the boulevard I had traced with obedient footsteps for years, past the park where children laughed oblivious to my invisible years. Each step reinforced a truth I had never allowed myself to say. My life had been mine to reclaim. My choices had been waiting for me. I had simply been conditioned to obey. I paused briefly, feeling the weight of the sketch folder, the brass key, the card. Then I exhaled, slowly, letting the air fill the spaces where doubt had once resided. I did not look back. The door to possibility was open. The future was unwritten. The marriage was fractured, perhaps irreparably. But my identity, long dormant, long suppressed, had awakened. And with that awakening came clarity, purpose, and a terrifying, exhilarating freedom. For the first time in decades, I chose myself.